Hello and welcome to Unreal. So, before I begin, one word of warning. These first two videos won't have any actual gameplay footage. The first video will be just me talking about the history of the game, and the second one will be me talking about the plot of the game. So, in case you just want to hop straight into action, go directly to video number 3. And with that said, let me give you some background about this game. So, this is Unreal. It is a science fantasy first-person shooter, released in 1998. Created, as you can see in the lower left-hand corner there, by Epic Mega Games and Digital Extremes. Epic Mega Games now is known as simply Epic Games. It has been published by GT Interactive, later on known as Infogrames, and after that as Atari. So yeah, this is the first game in the Unreal series. You probably have heard about games like Unreal Tournament. Essentially, Unreal Tournament to Unreal is what Heroes of Might and Magic is to Might and Magic. That is, there are spin-offs that have gained a lot more popularity than the originals. But in both cases, I think the originals really deserve a look as well. So, let me tell you a little bit about the way this game was developed. So, the whole development of this game actually started back in 1994. That was back when Windows 3.1 was the latest Windows version. Yeah. But back then, the only thing that was created was essentially a few drawings, like concept art and things like that. And probably some of the coding, but generally it took them 2 years. No, actually it was only 1 year, yeah. In 1995, they released, well, showcased, what is now called the Unreal 95 tech demo. That was, as you can imagine, back when Windows 95 was absolutely new, and that was actually before Quake 1 was released, so yeah. That tech demo essentially was the first showcase of what the whole Unreal Engine was capable of doing. So what it had is point-based dynamic lighting, different texture types for different surfaces, including a very interesting specular lighting type. Like here you can actually see reflections there. That's one thing that unfortunately did not make it to Unreal Engine 2. But that specular effect that was in the tech demo in 95 didn't make it anywhere, even to this game in the final version, so that's pretty odd. It also had the modern 3D movement, like with the mouse and all, and also had an automap, which again is not present in any later games, which is strange. Moreover, it included 4 levels, mostly castle themed or church themed or something like that. At the time, Unreal was really different from this final version that you see here. Basically, it was not a science fantasy, but actually just fantasy game. And you were supposed to be playing as a barbarian woman fighting all kinds of fantasy type enemies, like wizards, dragons, minotaurs, gargoyles, and other things. But essentially, I don't know really what changed, but the developers made up their minds, and in 1997 Another tech demo, well, basically it was an alpha release and it was leaked not a long time ago actually. And from there we know that at that point they had already changed their minds. And Unreal was then, well, like it is now, a science fantasy game. It had already Scar, Kral, Brutes, and other enemies that you know from this game, or will get to know later. But although it also contains some of the old things like a dragon. So yeah, another interesting thing about that 97 tech demo was that the heads-up display was very similar to the one in Doom. Probably inspired by that too. It had a metal panel at the bottom of the screen and the weapon was centered. But otherwise it was not a very interesting release actually. The most interesting thing about Unreal as a whole, I guess, was the Unreal 98 beta, back when Windows 98 was released. So this beta I think was also leaked, and the interesting thing about it is that it had an astounding amount of content. Like really, it had around 3 times more content than the final game. So that's a lot. The gameplay also, unlike in Final Unreal, where the gameplay is strictly linear, that one had a pseudo-unlinear gameplay in where you had to backtrack and things like that. And unfortunately, again, I don't know why, but they decided to drop many of the maps, and essentially we got the release that is not as interesting as the beta. But thankfully, well, essentially most of the content that was in the 98 beta, it was later on released as a separate expansion pack, so at least it wasn't lost forever. Though there still is some content that was unreleased, which is kind of a shame, but oh well. And finally, in 98, 22nd of May, Unreal was finally released in its final phase. So, what made it special back then? Basically, the first thing is graphics. In fact, from this here Flyby demo, you can already see that graphics are really nice. Especially considering that this was released back in 98. The main competitor for Unreal at the time was Quake 2. But of course Unreal was graphically superior to it. Essentially all Unreal and Unreal Tournament games had the best visuals at the time of their release, so that's something to keep in mind. So yeah, another selling point of this game was the atmosphere of it. Again, you can see that from this demo already. The architecture, lighting, and music are key components in creating a very immersive atmosphere. You will see that a lot in the upcoming playthrough of the game. Now, what makes... I could also add that another selling point was that this game also has a multiplayer component. It includes quick games against bots or other players over the internet, so it has replayability, and quite a lot of it. Now, what makes this game still interesting at this point in time, roughly 13 years after its release? Well, generally the farsightedness of the development team. There are 3 points that make this game unique. Well, mostly unique. The first point is mod support. This game, even on release, I think, included development tools that the developers themselves used to create the game. Such as Unreal Ed, the Unreal Map Editor 1.0 that was used to create maps, and also the first version of Unreal Script that was used to create most of the programming in the game. Like most of the standard games that are created from scratch, they're written essentially all in languages like C and C++ or something of the likes. This game, only the core is written in C++ and everything else is in Unreal Script. And that part is effectively open source. Everyone can read that code, and everyone can create more code in a form of mods. So any fans can create new models, new game types, and new mutators. In fact, I am also a developer, and I will be using a mutator I created for myself while playing this game. But this is for a later time. Another thing that makes this game unique, and basically absolutely unique, is the support for S3TC compressed textures. What that brings is high resolution texture support. Now consider this. Usual textures in this game are essentially of, well, say 128 on 128 pixels in size. That's the normal size texture. Large ones can go up to, say, 256 on 256, but it's quite rare. With S3TC, that allows much higher textures, you can get a lot higher size. That's what the Unreal Retexturing project is all about. It's a fan-based project that aims to remake most of the textures in the game to high-resolution textures. Already it has covered, I believe, around half of the textures of the game, perhaps more, I'm not entirely certain. But either way, it's already quite well in its progress. So consider this. There are 3 texture resolution presets that you can download from their website, unrealtexture.com. The low end starts from 1024 on 1024 textures, and that's low end. The high end that I will be using is, well, the normal texture is basically 2048 on 2048 pixels in size. So that is more than a wallpaper, and that is for a single texture. And extreme end goes up to 4096 on 4096 pixels in size. And that is astounding and large. I don't think there is any other game that has textures as large as that and as detailed as that. So that makes Unreal very unique in that regard. Now, another thing that keeps the game rolling even at this point in time is the support for cooperative games. The co-op game type allows multiplayer experience of the single-player campaign. That essentially means that both games over local area network and over the internet, that game type is basically the most active game type that is still being played on the net. There are still plenty of servers for that, and essentially what makes it very nice to play is that is the single player campaign, but you have a multiplayer component in it, and it gets very playable that way, and generally fun to play because you have more players that you can share your experience with. So yeah, that's all about generally about the game I wanted to say. Now there are a few technical terms I want to explain here, and for that I will have to go a bit into the release history of the patches for this game. Now the initial release of Unreal patch version 200, I believe, at that point the game had quite a few stability issues. It was not stable at all. It used to crash a whole lot and generally had a bit of poor coding in it. So it's natural that it got quite a lot of patches in its own time. Well, for example, patch 220 in particular brought quite a lot of changes, such as overhauled AI, improvements to network code, or gameplay options, and also patches before that changed even things like weapon sounds. And you can already see that there were 20 patches in between, so there were really a lot of changes between versions. Now, patch 224V was the last patch to Unreal that had everything working correctly on the server side, and had also maximum compatibility with clients. So for a real long time, servers running 224V were the standard. And later on, the patch 225F was released, and it was generally regarded as the last official patch for the classic Unreal. And for a long time it was essentially the optimal choice for playing the game. Although I should say that it still had quite a few issues, essentially, especially on modern hardware. Now, during late 1998, development began on the expansion pack for Unreal that I already mentioned. Back then it was just known as the Unreal Expansion Pack, or short as UPack. Unlike the game itself, which was created by Digital Extremes and Epic Games, the expansion pack was mostly developed by Legend Entertainment, under the supervision of the two aforementioned companies, of course. Now, on the 26th of June in 1999, the expansion pack, now titled Unreal Return to Nepali, was released. It included a fair amount of content, but we will get back to that once we get to that game. So that is for quite a bit while later. And in 1999, Epic Games came up with an idea of creating a second expansion pack for Unreal. Essentially, they wanted it to focus on the multiplayer component of Unreal, and things like bot gameplay. So it was internally known as Bot Pack. So during its development, the developers noticed that it would be actually difficult to maintain compatibility with all the different patches of the game, also with Unreal Return to Nepali and different patches of Bot Pack. So essentially they decided that, hey, why not? Let's make this a different game entirely that wouldn't require you to own Unreal, and that could be standalone. Well, perhaps also there were some monetary considerations. I mean, if there is another game that doesn't require you to have the original, that means you only have to purchase a single game instead of buying one game and then buying the expansion pack for it. So there was logic in that. What happened to Bot Pack is that after it was branched into its own game, on the 23rd of November in 1999, now known as Unreal Tournament, it was released. And again, more information about it once we get to that game. So, after the release of Return to Nepali, Epic Games decided to essentially bundle the expansion pack and the original into one whole. This was named Unreal Gold, and again, the logic of that was very similar to what I said earlier. It's a lot better for customers to buy a single game instead of buying a game and then finding an expansion pack for it. Actually, a lot of work went into Unreal Gold to make it what it is now. Essentially, both Unreal and Unreal Return to Nepali on release were different kind of games. They had different executables, and you could launch either Return to Nepali or Unreal. With Unreal Gold, they made both of them very integrated, so you could launch both games from one unified UI. So it was really something else. So yes, Unreal Gold was released in 2000, and essentially this is what you can see being run right now here. I can show you this screen here. This is the Unreal Gold, also says Unreal Edition. We'll get to that a little bit later. So Unreal Gold, as you can see, is somewhat different from the standalone games. On release, Return to Nepali, I think, was also to the 5F. Unreal Gold had a patch version 226B. That allowed Unreal Gold clients to join games hosted on Unreal and Unreal Gold servers. Now, around that time, due to the instabilities in Return to Nepali, players demanded a new patch for the expansion pack. In fact, they even created a petition online, and many people signed it. So essentially, Legend Entertainment was forced to create a new patch for Return to Nepali. However, since they were forced to do it, they did a hasty job of it, and it fixed some things. It also broke a lot more things, like internet compatibility with servers. So it was messy, very messy. Basically, if you have a server running to 6F, Unreal Gold clients cannot join you, so yeah, it's a mess. Anyway, later on, Epic Games decided to create a even larger bundle of Unreal that included Unreal, its expansion pack, and Unreal Tournament to form a package they called Totally Unreal. However, after it was done, it was released only in a very limited amount, and only, I believe, in certain countries. I know it was released in Australia and things like that. I'm not entirely certain. So one thing that it also lacked was the integration that went into Unreal Gold. Essentially, if they had put a lot of work in it, they could have formed a package that had a uniform UI and could in fact run Unreal Tournament, Unreal, and Unreal Return to Nepali at once, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So Totally Unreal was simply a bundle of Unreal Gold and Unreal Tournament separately. Just too bad, but oh well, what can you do? And finally, on 2006, Epic Games and their new publisher Midway Entertainment, that is now defunct by the way, created a new bundle that had all the content of Totally Unreal, and also both Unreal 2 and Unreal Tournament 2004 included in it. It was called Unreal Anthology. And once again, it's just a bundle without any integration. And now that is exactly the release I got this Unreal Gold from. And so that's exactly what we will be playing here. So, yes, that's all for the official releases. Now there is more. For instance, when I show you the desktop here, also by the way, you can show the whole screen here. As you can see, it says version 227H here. And I never said anything about version 227. So what is 227, and also what is Unreal Enhanced Edition that you see in the video title there? Essentially, even though the last patches for the classic Unreal was 225F, and for Unreal Gold it was 226B, there were more unofficial patches. Essentially in 2005, Smurfch, the creator and owner of the old Unreal website, got in contact with Epic Games for a possible new patch for Unreal. Epic Games agreed to that, and they gave the full source code, the core of it, the C++ code, to him, and in order for him to create a new patch. So this new patch, of course, was named 227. The development of 227 took 2 years, and in 2007 the first alpha release of the patch, 227A, was ready for public. The development continued after that, and in fact is still ongoing, with 227H released in 2011 being the latest version at the time of this recording. However, version 227I is very close, so I will probably be upgrading it during my playthrough. So, you may wonder, what does patch 227 actually bring? Well, actually it brings a lot to this game. Now, one of the things is that it brings lots of bug fixes, lots of stability fixes, lots of compatibility fixes, security fixes, networking fixes, Unreal Editor upgrade to Unreal Ed 2, also a lot of new features such as a particle engine, static mesh support, semi-dynamic shadows, latest renderers, even a Linux client, and much, much more. In fact, you can read all about it in the release notes over at Old Unreal. But the document is gigantic due to the sheer amount of new features and fixes that went into the patch. So I have to say that really there was a lot of work put into this patch. And I have to congratulate the 227 development team for making this possible. It's a great patch, and I really suggest that if anyone else is playing the game, you should definitely get patch 227, or else you're missing out on a lot of things. Now, since 227 is now relatively stable, it's a release candidate at this point. A few people, including me, decided to utilize the new power of it in order to enhance the original maps of the game. The project was named Unreal Enhanced Edition. Now, the Unreal Flyby that you are seeing right now was supposed to be enhanced, but unfortunately the person who was working on it did not meet the deadline, so I will show you the enhanced version of this later on. But, well, This presents us with the ability to compare. So it's not all bad. The one change I did to this map was I changed the music to Flightcastle 2, the remix of the original track for this Flyby by Alexander Brennan. So it's, well, it fits, I guess. Though I still think the original had a little bit more epicness to it, but, well, it's a matter of taste. About Unreal Enhanced Edition. So far we have one finished map and 3 maps in the progress of being enhanced. I will show you the finished map, of course. Also the current progress on the unfinished map, and perhaps at the time we will get to that other map that is being used, enhanced, we'll also have the final version of that one, but we'll see about that later. So as you can see, the development is rather slow due to the fact that there are essentially 2 developers working on this project, and there are a lot of maps in Unreal and a lot of things to enhance, actually. So essentially the purpose of this playthrough here will be threefold. One is, well, simply to play the game and let me share the experience with everyone else who are watching this playthrough. 2, to show off what patch 2.2.7 has to offer so far. And 3, to preview and promote Unreal Enhanced Edition so that more developers would want to join the initiative. Now, if you are knowledgeable about Unreal map editing and would like to participate in Unreal Enhanced Edition development, you are free to join the team by posting in the Unreal Enhanced Edition thread over at Old Unreal. The link to that will be included in the video description. Okay, one more thing I want to note about patch 2.7 is that for some reason some people don't really want to use it, essentially for all the wrong reasons. Some of the reasons stated by people are that it breaks compatibility, which is untrue. It doesn't break pretty much anything, and if anything it makes it better. Also that it changes gameplay or visuals. Again, not true. You can undo everything very easily by unselecting certain options. And the fact that it's simply an unofficial patch, which is again not exactly correct because it's a semi-official patch. After all, Epic Games gave the source code to Smurfch in order to make this patch, so it's a semi-official patch anyway. So if you like what you see here, please spread the word about patch 2.7. The more publicity it gets, the better. The more bugs will be able to be fixed, and, well, generally more people will be happy with their Unreal. Alright, so there was a lot of things I just told you. So to finish this all off, I will tell you about exactly what I'm using here. Well, first of all, I already mentioned that I'm using Unreal Gold from Unreal Anthology to play the game. Here I'm using patch 2.7h, again I mentioned that. I'm using the OpenGL renderer provided by 2.7. It also has 2 Direct 3D renderers, but I don't know, I always like the OpenGL one. I'm also using OpenAL for sounds and Fmod for music through my onboard sound chip. Now, I would normally use my dedicated sound card, the Sound Blaster X5, but for some reason it doesn't really work well with Fraps and OpenAL. No idea why, but yeah. So essentially, the sounds in this game are better when you have a dedicated sound card, but I guess that also goes for pretty much every game. So yeah. I'm also, as I mentioned, I'm using the high-end S3DC textures from the Unreal Rotation project. I will be playing through the currently completed levels of Unreal Enhanced Edition, and also playing through the regular Unreal levels if they haven't been enhanced yet. I will note that in the video title, essentially, whether it has been enhanced or not. And in addition, I will be playing using one of my own mutators. I shortly mentioned that earlier. The mutator that I created there is named UT2004 Pickup Sounds, short for Unreal Tournament 2004. It increases the variety of pickup sounds in the game. Well, normally all pickup sounds for all the ammo, all the weapons and whatnot, they use the exact same sound effect, and it's a kind of click that gets really annoying after a while. So generally I can no longer play this game without that mutator of mine that introduces a lot more variety in pickup sounds. So you get to hear them. So that will be also better for the viewers there. And finally, I'm recording this in full HD. You can already see that, I hope. And using Fraps here. And on Windows 7 64-bit. Basically, I could be recording this on Linux because, like I said, Patch 2.7 includes a Linux client, but of course it's not as optimized as the Windows client, which it was originally created for, so for performance reasons I'm using Windows here. So yes, that will be it for this first video. With all that said, let us move on to the story of the game. So join me in the second video for that. See you all then, and later.